Okay, so we're focusing on the Chasidic interpretation of the story of Korach, the dispute of Korach, which we discussed yesterday at some length. And today we're going to take a little bit of a different, in other words, maybe somewhat overlapping, but a different road, a different approach. And I guess the opening question would be that which was asked yesterday. Amy asked the question yesterday, and here's what she asked. She asked that if Korach leads the rebellion against Moses, and he says that we don't need any leaders, the entire assembly is holy, and therefore why do you elevate yourselves over the congregation? That is the claim of Korach. Very, very succinct, short and to the point. And he gets a following because it's a nice claim. The question becomes, if you look a little deeper in the story, you notice that Korach himself wanted to be a leader. So there is some discrepancy here between Korach's claim that we don't want leadership and Korach's own actions, which imply that he does want to be the leader. So the simple answer, which we said yesterday, was that Korach was not being honest. In reality, he wanted to be the leader. But in order to take down Moses and Aaron, so he claims we don't need leadership. But that's not really what he wanted. That was the political angle we presented yesterday. But from the Kabbalistic angle, it's much more complex. And I'll just put it out here, then we'll try to explain over the next few minutes. From the Kabbalistic angle, what's happening here is Korach is not opposed to leadership. Korach is opposed to the leadership, the style of leadership of Moses and Aaron. Meaning, if Korach's the leader, he is not elevating himself above the people. Moses and Aaron are. And I'm going to try to explain what we mean by this. So in other words, Korach, on the surface, it's a contradiction. He says, everybody is equal. Why do we need leaders? Then he says, I want to be the leader. So why is it, if you don't believe in leadership, why do you want to be the leader? Which is what Amy asked yesterday. So the answer is that Korach wants leadership, but his form of leadership is not elevating himself over other people. Moses and Aaron, his form of leadership does elevate Moses and Aaron over everybody else. And that's what Korach opposed to. So he's not opposed to leadership per se. He's opposed to the leadership that will make differences and make differentiation between the people. And that's the big picture. In other words, that's the idea. But now we have to elaborate and explain what that means. What is the nature of the leadership of Moses and Aaron? What is the nature of the leadership that Korach? What is the nature of leadership that Korach envisioned, and how they differ, and why we like the idea of the leadership of Moses and Aaron, even though Korach sounds quite appealing. So there's two ways to do this. One way is to do from the particular to the general. We should go first, give all the details, and then get to the big idea. But maybe the better way to do it is to first introduce the big idea. Spoiler alert: if you don't want to hear the big idea yet, you want to be in suspense until 10:45. Just mute me. It's not a problem. I'm not going to be offended. But if you're willing to hear the big idea now, so I'll put out the big idea. The big idea is as follows. Everybody understands, Korach understands that there is division in this world. There are people that are, let's say, heaven and earth, meaning some people are more involved in the spiritual side of life, and others are more involved in the world of action, in the world of the physical materialism. That's a division. That's a division built into creation. We're going to elaborate upon this. We discussed this at some length when we discussed the process of creation of Monday and Tuesday a few weeks ago. So this discourse revisits the division between Monday and Tuesday. In short, Korach likes Monday, Moses and Aaron like Tuesday. So what do I mean? I mean, division is we all understand there's division. The question is, what's the purpose of the division? In other words, Moshe and Aaron say that if there's a person who spends most of his time involved in the material aspect of life and the material side of existence, that's earth. And then the leader is heaven. The leader is a person who studies Torah, who has love and awe to God. He's spiritually developed, spiritually enlightened. That's heaven. What Moshe and Aaron are trying to do, they're trying to inspire the common people who are involved in the physical world to cultivate love to God, to cultivate a connection to spirituality, right? Moshe and Aaron want that when the person is in their field, in the field planting, or the person is on the stock market trading, or the person is trying to make $1, Moshe and Aaron want that while they're engaged in that physical, mundane reality, they should have a yearning and seek to elevate and become connected to God. That's what Aaron sees as his role. In fact, 2 weeks ago we read the parsha. Aaron's job is ba'alotcha tanerot, to when you kindle the candles, and the Chasidic philosophy explains that the candle, Aaron lights the candles, but that's just a metaphor. Who are the candles? I mean, of course, Aaron lit the candles, but the candles are the Jewish souls, and Aaron's job is to ignite the Jewish souls, that they should have that flame of fire, and the fire is a metaphor for a yearning surging upward to want to connect to God. So that's Moses and Aaron's role of a model of leadership, that you have people in heaven, people on earth. The people on earth strive and yearn and want to be connected to heaven. And what do you gain? You're not just trying to create a bunch of frustrated people. The people in the field should want to connect to God while they're in the field. They say no. They say if you are connected to God, if you want to connect to God, if you're yearning for God, if you're yearning to be more spiritual, then that is your purpose, and that really is what connects you to spirituality. That's Moses and Aaron. Korach is a lot more. Korach is different model. You have to be very careful, because with almost everything Korach says is true. So that's why it's a tricky disagreement. Korach, almost everything he says is true except the application. What is Korach saying? Korach says you don't have to bother people. You don't have to convince the people or try to inspire people who are on earth to try to seek to heaven. You don't have to do that. Let the people who are in heaven be in heaven. Let the people who are studying Torah study Torah. Let the people who are in the market be in the market. And the people in the market don't have to yearn to connect to heaven. Why is that? Because Korach is a great Kabbalist. And Korach says, in some sense, you could connect to God, not through spirituality, but just living a physical life. Materialism is also an expression of godliness, just like spirituality is. Okay? So what's the model of leadership that Korach wants? Of course, Korach himself wants to be a high priest. But what Korach says is, if I'm the high priest, I'm not like Aaron. I'm not going to frustrate the people and try to inspire them that they should have a desire to connect to holiness. I'll leave them alone. What I will tell them is, you go to the marketplace, raise your eggplants, you raise your cattle, and doing so connects you to God. And he makes a very deep, compelling argument, and we'll elaborate upon that in some ways, physical, material reality has a deeper source than spirituality. So in this sense, what he is saying is, Korach is saying, I want to be a leader, but I don't want to be a leader like Moshe and Aaron, because Moses and Aaron, what they're doing, they're saying we're better. They're saying spirituality is superior. So even if you are on earth, you should seek and desire and have a yearning for spirituality. And the ramification is, if you have 5 minutes, if you're sitting in your office and you have 5 minutes of a lunch break, if you're learning from Moses and Aaron, you'll open up your phone and you'll open up Chabad.org and you'll study Torah. But you run around and you do a mitzvah, because you're seeking and yearning to connect to holiness. That's the energy and spirit that Moses and Aaron want to cultivate within the people. But Korach says, so you're saying you're better? You're saying because you study Torah, because you meditate, and because you have a love to God, and because you're connected to spirituality, you think you're higher than everybody else? No, everybody has their own path. And the people who are invested in materialism, they're perfect just the way they are. You don't have to cultivate within them a yearning to connect to spirituality. And like I said, there's a deep philosophical truth behind what Korach is saying. Of course, like all the good disputes, both sides have a point. And the point is that what Korach says is true, but it's premature, as we will elaborate upon. So let's take a moment to think about philosophically what Korach says. How is it possible that Korach can argue that materialism is just as great, if not greater, than spirituality? So what the Kabbalah explains as Korach's position is as follows. It's a little esoteric. It's a little bit different than what we're usually used to hearing, but bear with me for a minute. So we're going to make the argument. I know this sounds radical, but we'll make the argument as follows. This is a philosophical argument, counterintuitive. Typically, when we think about holiness, the Kabbalah refers as one of the synonyms for godliness in the Kabbalah is Or Ein Sof. You may have heard the term Or Ein Sof, the infinite light. Infinite light. What do you mean by light? God is a light. God is not light. But light is a metaphor for revelation. When you're in a state of revelation, that's light. So what does it mean that you connect to the infinite light of God? It means that you feel connected. The godliness is revealed in your life. So if I study Torah, I feel connected to God. So I have the light of God within me. If I do a good deed, if I do a mitzvah, I feel connected to God. So I have the light within me. So let's classify all of holiness and spirituality as light. Now we're going to classify all of materialism as darkness. What do I mean when I say it's darkness? I don't mean that it's evil. When we say darkness, we mean that there's no revelation of its spiritual source. When you study Torah, you feel godliness. When you're eating lunch, it's darkness in the sense that the divine source of this food or the divine energy that's creating you at this moment, it's concealed, it's not revealed, so it's not light, so it's darkness. That is the typical perspective on reality. There's light and there's dark. Now, what's superior? Of course, light is superior, right? Why not? Light is superior. That's what we're used to thinking. Godliness is synonymous with light, and therefore light is superior. Says Korach, and we'll explain why he says it and what his spiritual source is. We can elaborate upon every word here, but we're just trying to give the big picture here. What Korach says is that darkness is just as great as light, if not greater. So Aaron and Moses are in the business of igniting fire, of igniting light, of teaching the people how to connect to spirituality. Korach says, no, you're missing the point here. You're missing a deeper truth. The deeper truth is darkness is higher than light. How is darkness higher than light? How do you do this one? So what's the problem with light? The problem with light is revelation. The problem with revelation is you could never reveal the essence. Even a human being cannot reveal his own essence, and certainly God's essence cannot be revealed. So for example, if you talk to me, you tell me how you feel, that's light, that's expression. But could you really truthfully express everything that's inside you to somebody else in words? It's impossible. Why? Because your deepest core defies description. If it defies description, it's darkness. So the problem with revelation is that the moment you're into light, the moment you're into revelation, you want to reveal and express something, the problem is that you already missed the essence of God, because the essence of God defies description. So I say, I'm studying Torah, I feel connected. It's wonderful, it's light, but you feel connected to godly energy. But do you feel connected to God's essence? Impossible. You can never know God's essence. So here's what Korach says, something interesting. Korach says light is a distraction. Darkness, you don't see any expression. But darkness actually could lead you to understand that everything comes from the essence of God, and the essence of God cannot be expressed. So just like light leads you to some understanding of God, darkness, when contemplated and thought about correctly, darkness could actually lead you to the essence of God. And this is a Kabbalistic truth. The truth of the matter is that the creation of physical reality, it comes from a deeper level from God's essence, as opposed to the spiritual worlds. Because to create something where you are not felt is much harder than to create something where you are felt. So what I'm trying to say here is, just to summarize a little bit, because I'm putting out a lot of ideas here. The first point is, Aaron's job is to get the people, quote unquote, in the dark, involved in materialism, to seek to connect to the light. And Aaron and Moses, therefore, are superior, meaning higher, because they believe that light is higher than darkness. And therefore, the people, quote unquote, in the dark, the people engaged in materialism, Aaron's job and Moses' job is to inspire them to seek and yearn for spirituality. And then when they'll have a few moments in their day, they'll run and study Torah and do a mitzvah. And therefore, they'll bring light, even for a few minutes, they'll bring light into their day. That's the model of holiness of Moses and Aaron. Korach says, you're driving people crazy. People are gonna need therapy. You tell them to be in the physical world and desire spirituality. They're in the darkness. They should want light. They're just gonna create frustration. Other than the psychologist, no one's gonna be happy. So Korach's model is, Korach says, no. You are elevating yourself above the people. You're making a mistake. Everybody's equal. What does it mean everybody's equal? Everybody's equal it's not that everybody's in the light or everyone's in the dark. Some people are devoted to spirituality. They're in the light. Others are devoted to physical reality. They're in the darkness. But who said light is better than darkness? Maybe darkness is just as good as light. Maybe this should be a separation. Don't try to merge a separation that the people in the darkness should seek light. Let the people be in the darkness be in the dark. Let the people in the light be in the light. And both of them could connect to God. Because just like light leads you to holiness, darkness actually leads you to a deeper place in holiness, as we explained, because the essence of God is always dark. Almost if you want to think about it in scientific terms, what's greater, light? What's greater, the power of a star or the power of a black hole, right? The black hole, even though you don't see light, the black hole has much more energy. Why? You can't see it, but the energy is more profound. And it's almost like a physical manifestation of this truth, where darkness actually has more power than light, because light gives you some indication, some expression, some feeling of connection to God, but you can never feel the essence of God. So in other words, if you feel connected to God, that's a ray of God. It's not God's essence. What do you feel God's essence? Argues Korach. In God's absence, when you don't see God, there's no distraction. Then you can think about the essence of God. So in short, that's what Korach says. That's Korach's argument. I don't know if this is, in short, that's his argument. Now we have to offer the rebuttal. Before we offer the rebuttal, we have to really elaborate on what Korach is saying. But before we do that, if anybody wants to make a comment or ask a question, because I'm saying here everything is upside down. Remember, we used to think light is better than dark. I mean, spirituality, that's how you connect to God. Now we're saying Korach says, again, he's wrong. He's wrong, but he's right. In some sense, he's right. Korach is saying that light has a lot of great qualities, but light is a distraction because light does not let you, light is expression, and the essence of God can never be expressed. So sometimes when you're not there, you feel more than when you are here. We can start bringing metaphors for this if you want. You want to start bringing metaphors. Where is your love to your child more powerful? When you say yes and you buy them an ice cream or a bicycle or a Ferrari or a Porsche, whatever you're buying them, when you're giving, when you're expressing, or when you say no, when you hold back, when you don't express. In some ways, when you're expressing, the expression limits the love. How much if I'm a child, I say, how much does my mother like me? My mother likes me as much as my Hanukkah gift costs. So if my Hanukkah gift costs $25, wow, it's amazing. I got an expression of love. But my understanding of my mother's love is limited to that which I can understand and comprehend. If my mother tells me no, she says no. She holds back. Now, either I feel in the dark. I don't feel any expression of love. But if I think about it deeper, I realize that the love also comes from a deeper place within the parent. And the mother told me no because she loves me so much. How much does she love me? Well, there's no amount that will limit my understanding of my mother's love, because there's no positive expression of the love. The love was expressed in a negative way by saying no. So that's a metaphor. If your child could reach the maturity, I'm not saying it's easy. And again, that's part of the rebuttal. But if your child could reach the maturity and see the love of the parent in the no, then the love of the parent in the no is actually higher than the love of the parent in the yes. Because in the yes, how much love does the child see? Whatever the price tag is on the event, on the gift, even if you buy them a house, $1 million, $2 million, okay, that's a limitation. But if there's no expression of love, if there is an expression of love, then the love is limited by the expression, but you don't see the essence. If you tell your child no, and your child is able to understand that as an expression of your love, as an expression, I don't want to say expression, it's not express. I guess it's expressed, not revelation, but expression. If you tell your child no, and your child sees that no, maybe it's not a revealed love, but as an expression of love, then the love is infinite because there's nothing that will limit it. So that's a metaphor where darkness is more powerful than light. Where holding back is more powerful than expressing. Why? Because anything you will express by definition is limited. That's Korach's argument. Now we have to read, like I said, we have to examine the source of Korach's claim, and then we have to go back to Moshe's rebuttal and explain why our understanding of spirituality, it's almost like frustrated spirituality, where we're in the physical and we seek the spiritual. We're in the darkness and we yearn for light. That's one model. The other model is Korach. Those who are in the dark should be in the dark. Those who are in the light should be in the light, and they should be separated. And therefore, everybody is equal. He doesn't mean there shouldn't be leaders. Yes, he wants to be in the light, but don't impose the desire for light upon the people in the dark. Don't impose your understanding, the yearning and seeking of spirituality from the people who are involved in the material world. There's no reason to do so, because in fact, the darkness actually may have a higher source. That's Korach's claim.
Rabbi, so the main difference between the two, philosophically and spiritually, is that Moses and Aaron believe that there's the interpenetration of those two. And in fact, Judaism says they must be connected.
Correct.
And he is saying, absolutely not, which, can I just say another thing? On the reading of it without having any biblical knowledge, just reading the story, it just seems like Korach is challenging the leadership of a very fragile group of people whose disintegration would be probably guaranteed had he taken up. They would become a tribe, he would be hierarchy. So on the face of it, his evil was that he was destabilizing the enterprise.
Correct. And therefore, that's the practical interpretation of the story. But the Kabbalistic perspective always
sees... The deeper one was this whole thing of what is required of a human being to stay
Correct.
in their station, or to always seek to balance those two.
Correct. And I would say that the Kabbalah consistently always looks at all the people...
I lose you, Rabbi, because I have an unstable connection.
My apologies. What I'm trying to say is that consistently the Bible looks at all the troublemakers, and they say they're not just simple troublemakers. Usually there's some truth to their claim, and there is some truth to Korach's claim. As we explained, everything I said about Korach so far is true. Kabbalistically speaking, the source of darkness is the darkness is deeper than light, but it's not the whole truth, as we will elaborate upon. But I want to just defend Korach for a minute. Could create a lot of frustration, a lot of tension. Now, again, the question is tension good or bad? I'll give you the spoiler alert. Moses and Aaron think tension is healthy, but some people think tension is bad. So imagine you tell your child, I want you to be a doctor, but want to be a lawyer. Or I want you to be a lawyer, but you should want to be a doctor. Or I want you to live here, but want to live there. I mean, why would you do that? Why would you create all that tension, all that frustration? Much better to just do what you're doing and embrace it. That's what Korach's claim is. Because Korach doesn't like the tension. But as we will see later, the spiritual life is predicated on the tension between being in the physical world, but yet yearning for spiritual. And if you have both, if you have that tension is not something to heal. It's not something to solve. That tension is really what allows for life to go on. So the question is tension good or bad? That's really the question. Korach thinks tension is bad. We'd rather have separation. Moses and Aaron are saying you need a tension between the two. You need to move between the two worlds. And Korach is saying that means you're telling people that light is better than darkness. That means you're superior because you're in the light. Well, light maybe not be better than darkness.
Rabbi?
Yes.
Is one of the advantages of darkness is that it has a potential for revelation, which can become unlimited, and that's what the Kabbalah emphasizes on when compare the two.
Do you want to know the reality, or you want to know Korach's mistake? In reality, the main advantage of the darkness is that it will, if you look carefully, it will lead you to the essence. So it's not so much within it, but what its source. In other words, the darkness is not necessarily better than light, but the source of darkness is deeper than the source of light. So, for example, if you want to talk spiritually speaking within God, the ability to hold within, to reflect within the person as well. The ability to hold back comes from a deeper place within the person than the ability to give. In other words, if you have to say no to your child, that takes much more inner strength than to give. It's always easier to give. To hold back is much more powerful, and it comes from a deeper space of love within yourself. Okay, so we have a few questions here. Does Korach have famous worthy descendants? Korach does have famous worthy descendants. There is, the tradition is that Korach's children, two of Korach's children did teshuvah, and they were saved from the camp of Korach. And in the book of Psalms, they became prominent Levites, and they were singers in the temple. And there are psalms in the book of Psalms that were sung in the temple that are called, begin, Livnei Korach, Mizmor, a psalm for the children of Korach. And there are a few of them. I don't remember exactly how many, but there are a few beautiful songs from the children of Korach that is recorded in the book of Psalms and was sung in the temple, so they were a prominent family. Okay, next question. Would Korach say that Jews remain holy even if they do not observe halacha? That is a good question. I have to think about that question about the halacha. But they certainly would say, I don't know how to think about it in terms of halacha, so I have to get back to you. But I would would say that the model of Jewish life is that in the morning, you first connect to spirituality. You first say the Shema. You put on your tefillin. You pray, study Torah, and then you go out to the world. They would say, Korach would say, you don't have to do that. If your destiny, or call it what you want, if you are in the realm of the physical, and your job is to be in the physical world, so that's all you need to do to connect to God. You don't have to go to pray. You don't have to study. You don't have to meditate. You don't have to try to seek and cultivate within yourself a yearning for spirituality, which is basically another word for love to God. He says you don't have to do that. Why don't you have to do that? Because that's only one path to God. The path of speaking spirituality is only one path. But there are other paths. Now, does Korach say you don't have to do halacha? I don't know. I would imagine that depends. Some things you would have to do, some things you wouldn't have to do. You can't go against the Torah. But the lifestyle in which a person coming back from work at the end of the day and opening up a Talmud and studying a page of Talmud, right? That would be foreign to Korach's vision for life, because why are you doing that? Why are you telling somebody that his plowing the field is not enough? He needs something else to connect to God. Isn't it? If God wants you to plow the field, then that itself is enough. And that is Korach's claim. Now I'm just going to talk about this for a few minutes in the terms of the biblical story of Monday and Tuesday, because that's what the Zohar does, and then we'll talk about where Korach goes wrong. So, according to the Kabbalah, Korach is the tribe of Levi. Not according to the Kabbalah. Korach is the tribe of Levi, the Levites. Kabbalistically speaking, the Levites are the attribute of Gevura, of strength, of holding back. And if you look at the six days of creation, day number 2 is the day of separation. That's when the division was created in the world between the upper waters and the lower waters. And the Kabbalah says that's really a division between physical pleasures, lower waters, and spiritual pleasures, upper waters. And Korach is rooted in day 2, and therefore he likes separation. Moses and Aaron are rooted, and the Torah is number 3. Moses, Aaron, and the Torah are rooted in day 3. And the purpose of day 3 is to bridge the gap between the heaven and earth. So Monday separates heaven and earth. Tuesday bridges the gap between heaven and earth. Korach was created. Korach represents the energy of Monday, and therefore he likes the separation and he wants to preserve the separation. What he doesn't realize is that the purpose of the separation is to create the tension that will ultimately heal the separation, right? Why is there distance between heaven? Okay, so let's shift a little bit. Okay, let's stay on Monday and Tuesday for 1 second. Sorry for jumping all around. We know the story. The story is Monday, every day of creation, the Torah says God saw it was good. Sunday, God created the light. God saw it was good. The second day, it doesn't say it was good. Every other day of the week, it says, Vayara Elokim Kitov, God saw it was good, except for Monday. Monday, it doesn't say that God saw it was good. So what do the sages explain? The commentaries explain, the Talmud explains this, the Medrash says this, that Monday, we don't say it was good. You know why? Because Monday, division was created. Monday represents division between heaven and earth. And division between heaven and earth is not good. What happens on Tuesday? If you look at the story of Tuesday, now we have dry land. We see dry land as potential for human being. What is the human being? The human being is really a hybrid of heaven and earth because he has a body from the earth and he has a soul from heaven. So the human being is a hybrid. The human being, that's why the human being is full of tension. Everything in the human existence is filled with tension because really at our core, we have two energies coming together, the energy of heaven and the energy of earth. And our job is to, I'm not going to say not destroy the tension, but to channel the tension. And Tuesday heals the division of Monday. And that's why I say the commentaries that if you look on Tuesday, what does it say? It says the words, God saw it was good. It says it twice. Why twice? One for Monday, one for Tuesday. In other words, Monday is not finished. Division is not finished until it's healed. What do I mean to say in simple English? And that's what Korach doesn't understand, and that's what Moshe understands. What does it mean? What do we mean in simple English? Why does God create separation? Why is there a concept of separation in this world? Or of pain, or of separation, or of tension? So you could say God creates a separation of heaven and earth because he doesn't want the earth to be close to heaven. That's one thing you could say, right? Think about it. Before we were all spiritual, before Monday, it was only day one. Everybody was spiritual. Then God takes certain energy in the world and says, you know what? You're no longer spiritual. You're going to be the lower waters. You're going to exist on the planet Earth, and your job is to have a physical existence. Why does God do that? On the surface, it's because God doesn't want that part of reality to be connected to spirituality. But that's a mistake. That's Korach's mistake. Moshe understands, you know why God separates earth from heaven? I'll tell you why. Not because he doesn't want heaven. Because if you separate earth from heaven and you create that darkness and you create that separation, you know what the separation will bring about? The separation will bring about an even greater yearning. Because now the darkness creates longing, creates yearning. You can only have yearning and longing when you have separation. So what's happening now is that the water that was lowered, the water that was placed on earth now has a yearning to return to heaven and its yearning, its love for heaven is much more powerful than the water that always remained in heaven. So in the final analysis, who's closer to heaven? The water that's in heaven or the water that's on earth and yearns to come to heaven? So in the final analysis, the purpose of the separation of the lower waters from the upper waters is not because we're not interested in upper waters. It's because now when you separate them, you create the longing and the tension, a healthy tension, and that tension propels the lower waters even higher than the higher waters. So I know I'm speaking mysticism, but this is the stuff, this explains everything Judaism is really trying to achieve in this world. And therefore, says Moshe and says Aaron and says the Torah, we're the model of Tuesday. What's Tuesday? Tuesday sees that the separation of heaven and earth is not because God wants earth to be separate from heaven. It's to the contrary, because God wants earth to yearn for heaven. And if earth yearns for heaven, then earth is corrected. And in some sense, then the source, the higher source, the essence of God that's within the earth is revealed. So this is deep stuff. And if you want to go a step further, we're going to say Korach is right. Of course, Korach is right. When Mashiach comes, in the end of days, once you refine the materialism, you will in fact see that the materialism has a higher source than spirituality. But Korach's mistake is like almost all the mistakes in the Bible, is where people see a truth and they bring that truth prematurely. So almost like Adam and Eve, the Medrash says that Adam and Eve, the first sin was the sin that they ate of the tree of knowledge. What was the tree of knowledge? So according to one Medrash, it was the vine, it was the grape, it was wine. And they drank the wine too early. Had they waited for Shabbos, they were created on Friday. Had they waited for Shabbos, the wine would be elevated. So almost all sins in the Torah, the sin of the golden calf, prematurely. right? In other words, they thought the 40 days were over before they were over. They were jumping the gun. Almost all the sins of the Torah are sins where there's a truth, but if you try to bring about the truth prematurely, it's not going to work. So same thing over here. It is true that the source of the physical is higher than the source of the spiritual, but it's not revealed yet. And here is the key. Here is the key. The only way you can tap into the energy, the source, the essence of the physical is when the physical yearns for the spiritual. So the yearning, when you say the physical has to yearn for the spiritual, it's not just in order to tap the spiritual, it's also that allows its own source to connect. It allows it to connect to its source. And if you want to go back to the metaphors we offered earlier, here is how it's going to look. When you tell your child no, the no is not closeness. The child feels rejected. But if your child has the maturity, the child can realize that the source of the rejection is really a deeper love. But for that, your child has to have the maturity and has to be able to look for it. So the same thing is true. Only when we connect to spirituality do we have the tools to interpret and explain and experience material reality as an expression of its divine source. But if you don't seek to connect to the physical, if you don't seek to connect to the spiritual, then in the materialism, all you're seeing is its current manifestation. You're not seeing its source. So Korach is right, but Korach is wrong because yes, the material has a higher source than the spiritual. Yes, darkness is higher than light, but the only way you can touch the source of darkness is with the light. So you need the darkness, you need the light, and when you have the light, that illuminates the darkness. So I know what we're saying here is very esoteric, but it's worth it to explain. We'll open up the floor for questions. It's worth it to make sure we really understand what's happening here, even though there are a lot of moving pieces, because this is a very deep fundamental concept in the Kabbalah, because again, in the Kabbalah, everything is almost always upside down. What looks higher is really lower. What looks lower is higher. This is a beautiful case in point. We assume light is higher than darkness. Kabbalah says, no, darkness is higher than light. However, the only way you can experience the darkness as an expression of its source is when you yearn for the light. What is the ramification of all this before we take questions? The ramifications of all this is that in our life, we have the physical and we have the spiritual. We have the moments that we dedicate to taking care of our own physical needs. And then we have the moments or our physical pleasures. And then we have moments that we connect to our soul, to God. And Korach wants dichotomy, division. He doesn't want any crossover between the two. He wants you to be one person when you are in the synagogue and another person when you're on vacation. In other words, one person when you're studying Torah and another person when you're eating lunch. Korach wants division, machloket, division. Day 2, separate heaven and earth, because both heaven and earth are expressions of God. That's what Korach says. What Moshe says and what Aaron says is no. They have to blend. In other words, when you're on vacation, you have to feel connected to spirituality. You have to take a moment to study Torah, because the whole purpose, in other words, because the only way you'll tap the true energy of the physical is if you connect to the spiritual when you're on the physical. So when you're on vacation, when you're on the boat, and you connect to spirituality, that's how you tap into the source of the spirituality. So we don't want a strong separation between the physical and spiritual. The purpose of Monday is not to separate heaven and earth. The purpose of Monday is to bring about Tuesday, which is the tension between heaven and earth, actually serves as a bridge or as a trampoline where you can actually go higher and connect to the source of the physical. So this is deep stuff, like I said. It really encapsulates everything we're doing on this planet. So we want to make sure we understand it and we internalize it. If one Zoom meeting is not enough, we'll do it. We can continue another time. But this is important stuff. Thank you for joining me on this wonderful Friday morning. I hope you have a wonderful day and a wonderful Shabbos. And we'll see each other in good health. And if you want to join next week, we'll be in next week, Sunday, 9:30, back to normal. If anybody wants to discuss or ask a question or debate or rebel or all the above, please go ahead.
Rabbi, if Korach wasn't so evil, why was he swallowed up by the earth? I mean, this was one of the most dramatically awful deaths in the Bible.
Very
and
good.
It is like the epitome So it troubles me. I can't
Okay.
hear you. I can't.
No, I'm not. Can you hear me now?
Zoom
Can you
is
hear me
off
now,
again.
Jill? Jill, can you hear me?
Intermittently.
Okay, so I'm going to say it, and then I'm going to send you the
I'll
recording
have to
after.
call you.
Or I'll send you the recording when we're done. You can call me, but I'll put it out for the sake of everybody else. What happened with the story of Korach? So with the story of Korach, the earth opens up its mouth, and Korach gets swallowed into the earth. That's the story. Why such a severe punishment? So why such a severe punishment? So it depends on the perspective. If you look at the story and you say, as Jill did, and say there's an element of Korach is endangering everybody because we have to have a cohesive leadership when we're in the desert and where our existence is fragile. And if everybody pulls in another direction, the cohesion in the camp is going to fall and they will be susceptible to the external dangers. So we have to get rid of him. That's one interpretation. But if God wants to kill somebody, believe me, God's creative enough. God has many ways to kill somebody. He can send a pandemic. He can send the lightning. He doesn't have to have the earth swallow up Korach. So why do you have to have the earth swallow up Korach? And this is the deep truth that the Kabbalistic angle explains. Because what does it mean that the earth is going to swallow up Korach? What it tells you is, Korach, if we lived based on your philosophy, what's going to happen is we're going to get swallowed up by the earth. Meaning to say, what's Korach's philosophy? The people who are in the physical world don't need to yearn for spirituality. They don't have to be pulled to heaven. So Korach says, really, if you're going to leave it, so God is showing, in other words, the story is showing the consequence. What happens if somebody says, I'm perfectly comfortable in the materialism, I'm living in the beautiful world that God created, I feel that materialism is an expression of godliness, and therefore I don't need to seek spirituality. So the Torah is telling you, know what the consequence of that is? The consequence is materialism is going to pull you down and swallow you up, and you're going to become more and more self-oriented and self-centered and ultimately self-destructive. And the only way to be above earth is to have that tension. If you're being pulled to heaven, you at least stay on the face of the earth. If you're not pulled to heaven, the materialism, the gravity of materialism will pull you down. Not so much physically, but not so much literally, but metaphorically. It means if you don't seek spirituality, then the materialism by itself will pull you down and you'll lose connection to the source of materialism. So this explains what the swallowing is. The swallowing is a consequence. It's a spiritual consequence. It's also a physical story. But from the perspective of the Kabbalah, the reason why this symbol was chosen is because what is the symbolism of being swallowed up in the ground? That is a symbolism of telling you what happens if you say, I'm comfortable as a materialistic person, I'm a good person, I don't need spirituality. If you don't need spirituality, sooner or later, you're going to become pulled in by the materialism and it becomes self-destructive from the moral and spiritual perspective.
Thank you. Beautiful interpretation.
Thank you. I'm just passing it on. I didn't make it up.
Rabbi?
Yes.
So from Hashem's perspective, it's all the same. Is that correct?
No, of course not. Of course not.
Anything the physical is more than the spiritual.
Of course, yes. The physical is more higher than the spiritual. What's higher, the body or the soul? So the truth of the matter is the body has a higher source. The problem is the only way you can tap into the source of the body is when you have the perspective of the soul. So when Mashiach comes is when the source of the body will be revealed on its own terms. So that's why the Kabbalah says that Korach was from Gvura, from strength, and the source of strength is higher, and therefore he wanted to say that we just need strength. We don't need chesed, we don't need kindness, we don't need revelation. And Aaron represents revelation. And Korach is right, because when Mashiach comes, the source of Gevurah, the source of darkness is revealed, which is why when Mashiach comes, the halacha follows Shammai, not Hillel. But this is, I don't want to overburden here with information, but the bottom line is, yes, it's true. Of course it's true that the source of darkness is higher than light. But the only way you'll understand it and feel it is if you connect to light. When Mashiach comes, we'll see that the earth itself has a higher source than spirituality. So who's right? It's very hard to say who's right. Korach is right. He's just premature. And if you do something premature, usually it has bad consequences.
So Korach would be pro doing a mitzvah without any intention.
Correct. And even you correct. Contention is, what do you mean by intention? Intention means that the mitzvah is an expression of my yearning and my love to God. What is love to God? What does love mean? There are different interpretations of love. But Aaron's love is love like fire, which is longing, right? So you say you're longing for something. You're longing means longing. So love, in Hebrew, you have it in the Song of Songs. I think it's in English too, an expression, love sick, right? Nafshi chalas avasecha, love sick to God. Someone's love sick. So you go to the psychologist, go to Korach, and Korach says being love sick is very unhealthy because you're just going to have frustration. So instead, don't love the other person. Just because if you love them, you have a yearning, and yearning is not healthy. Why is that foolish? It's foolish because the tension that's created from the love is actually the greatest spiritual experience you can experience in your life. So you want that tension because ultimately the tension actually creates the unity. But for that, you have to have the separation and you have to have the tension. And the tension comes about through the distance. So Korach says, I don't like tension. You'll be on here, she'll be there. You'll be in America, she'll be in Australia. You don't have to love each other. Love is yearning. We don't like yearning. Korach wants to heal us from the yearning. But a human being is always yearning. There's always a pull. Even when he's in the physical, he wants to be spiritual. Or he should want to be spiritual. Or that's what Aaron tries to teach him to do. And the other one says, what are you running for? What are you yearning for? You're just creating frustration. The answer is, I'm not creating frustration. This is love sick. This is love. This is longing. And longing, ultimately, the tension actually heals the rift, heals the separation. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a story in short. Again, this covers really the essence of Judaism. There's so much to talk about it. But under the circumstances where we're connecting over the Zoom, I think we did good. I think we did good under the circumstances, or we did good in general. But thank God, God will give us, God willing, we'll have many more opportunities and years and healthy years and long years to be able to discuss and connect to heaven and earth and understand that the tension between heaven and earth is not a problem. It should not be suppressed. The tension should be between heaven and earth, between the drive for physical pleasure and spiritual pleasure should be harnessed. And ultimately, when we have some light in our life, we actually see the source of darkness, and then we have the true wholesome existence.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.